Welcome, ghouls, to today's episode of Mental Health is Horrifying. I'm your horror Barbie host of darkness, Candace Green, psychotherapist and all-around spooky bitch, podcasting from my bat-filled cave in Toronto, Canada. I've seen a lot of horror movies, and I like a lot of different genres and decades of horror. But when I asked my friend Angelica Cresci what movie she wanted to talk about together, and she told me about Phantom of the Paradise, I thought, how haven't I seen this? I might have known that someone as wildly creative, stylish, and deep as Angelica would have such incredible taste in movies, but this one somehow exceeded anything I could have dreamed of. Phantom of the Paradise is a rock horror musical comedy that is glamorous, poignant, horrifying, and so much fun. The plot loosely adapts several classic works, including the 16th century Faustian legend, Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray, and Gaston Leroux's The Phantom of the Opera. The film is directed by Brian De Palma, who you might know from other movies like Carrie, which I did an episode on, Scarface, and the OG Mission Impossible. So it's wild to learn that Phantom of the Paradise was a box office failure upon its release in 1974 and received mixed to negative reviews. However, over the years, the film has received its flowers for the campy masterpiece that it is and has become a cult favorite. In a world where therapists are doing TikTok dances to get picked up by an algorithm and art is now referred to as content, Phantom of the Paradise definitely has resonance today, as it deals with the plight of creative people and how it often feels like you have to sell your soul to get noticed. Now, let me tell you a bit about today's guest, Angelica Cresci. Angelica is an occultist, content creator, writer, and astrologer based in Salem, Massachusetts. Angelica has been a Hades devotee for nearly a decade and specializes in glamour, Hellenistic mythic astrology, and chthonic magick. She has a BA in creative writing from Salem State University and is the host of Diaries of a Witch podcast, which is one of my faves and you gotta check out. When she's not staring at the stars, making content, or teaching, she spends her time writing. Something I really love about Angelica is the way she talks about witchcraft. She talks about it like it's the most normal thing in the world in such an accessible and lighthearted way because it is so normal. Being magical and creative and seeing the world beyond the veil is the most normal thing in the whole world, and I love that Angelica shares this energy in all that she does. Angelica is such a guiding light for witches and has been a massive source of inspiration for me in terms of integrating more magic into my everyday life. So I was so excited to talk to her about this wildly entertaining and devilish film and learn more about her creative process, her love for the villain, and how she keeps her soul from fully descending into hell. A little bit is fine, just not all the way. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's check out Phantom of the Paradise and its portrayal of the mental anguish of artists and selling your soul to get noticed as a creative.
20th Century Fox presents Phantom of the Paradise, a gothic horror story.
What was that?
Our love.
A beautiful love story.
Oh, love, baby.
Like a circus.
A cinematic odyssey through the rock universe. From Greece to glitter.
Wow!
And beyond. The story of a sound, the man who created it, the girl who sang it, the monster who stole it, and the phantom who haunts the paradise, the ultimate rock palace. Phantom of the Paradise.
My music is for Phoenix. Only she can sing it. Anyone else that tries dies.
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Well, you told me one time that you'd be somebody, that you weren't working just to survive.
Beef.
Man, you better get yourself a castrato for this.
Paul Williams as Swan.
And the angels that defeated them.
I want you to stop terrorizing the paradise and rewrite your cantata.
And the Phantom.
Stop and try me, only you might satisfy me,
Phantom of the Paradise.
There really is the Phantom. Phantom.
Winslow Leach is a sweet, but maybe naive singer-songwriter who is playing his sweet piano songs based on the cantata from The Legend of Faust when he is overheard by an evil music producer named Swan. Swan believes Winslow's music would be ideal for the opening of the Paradise, Swan's highly anticipated new concert hall, and has one of his henchmen steal it. Winslow makes several attempts to confront Swan about the theft of his music, so Swan, wanting to get rid of him, frames him for drug dealing, and he is sentenced to life in prison. 6 months in, Winslow escapes prison and breaks into Swan's music studio, but somehow falls face first into a record press, which burns the right half of his face and mangles his vocal cords. He then proceeds to fall into a river. Now disfigured and wet, Winslow sneaks into the Paradise's costume department and dons a black cape and a silver mask, transforming into the Phantom of the Paradise. He terrorizes Swan and his musicians, so Swan is like, okay, fine, why don't you record your Faustian cantata your way, and I'll even cast that hot woman of your choosing to sing it, you know, that one that you like named Phoenix. Here's a nice blood contract for you to sign. Winslow records and signs the contract, but obviously Swan breaks the contract and casts a hot glam rocker named Beef to perform the cantata. Winslow continues to terrorize everyone and murders Beef during his performance, so Swan is like, ugh, who's gonna do this now? And gets Phoenix to perform it, and then the crowd goes wild. Swan sees the lucrative potential of Phoenix and gets her to sign an evil blood contract too. We learn that Swan signed a blood oath of his own. He made a deal with the devil that he would remain youthful forever, and he has used his youth and influence to convince Phoenix to marry him during the final performance of the Faust cantata. It is at this point that Winslow swings in, all phantom-like, and starts trying to murder everyone to end this madness. There's guts everywhere. It's kind of like the final scene of The Substance, but more 70s. And as Winslow dies, Phoenix removes his phantom mask and recognizes him for the sweet, naive songwriter that he was. Hi, Angelica. Welcome to Mental Health is Horrifying.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Like, I'm so excited. I woke up this morning. I was like, I'm coming on the podcast. I can't wait.
I'm so thrilled that you're here. I look up to you so much as an artist and a witch and a creative, and I know that those are themes that are explored in this movie to a horrifying extent. And maybe it would make sense for us to begin with, what is your relationship to horror? Like, how did you relate to it when you were a kid? What is it like now? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was always really interested in like darker media in general, whether it was more kind of kitschy, like for children. Like I really liked like Tim Burton movies, and I really liked the child friendly like scary horror, that kind of stuff, paranormal stuff when I was a kid. So that was just my favorite genre as a child. And I do kind of relate that to like my interest in the chthonic realm and the underworld. And I'm a Hades devotee. And I feel like I was really connected to almost like the other side of the veil, the underworld being portrayed in media. And then as I got older, I've always been like a writer, and so I started writing these like spooky, scary short stories when I was like elementary, middle school, high school. And I think at the time that was a way for me to like kind of process like what was happening in my life. I hated being a child and a teenager. I hated middle school. It was just like the worst time for me. So writing, and specifically writing like spooky, scary, paranormal stories, for some reason helped me process, and I think that that carried over into the media that I was watching and consuming.
I love your writing of spooky, scary stories from the jump, and how it sounds like you were using horror as a place to process your feelings or work through what was really an uncomfortable time. And it's like we really do that now, maybe from a more conscious place. But before we became aware, it's like, yeah, we were doing this subconsciously as a way to heal ourselves through spookiness. I was so excited when you introduced this movie to me, Phantom of the Paradise, because I had never even heard of it. And when I Googled it right away, when you proposed it for our episode, I was like, what's this? I'd love to hear where you first came across this movie and what it means to you.
So this is like my favorite movie. I love it. It's so kitschy and wild and just fun. And the first time I came into contact with this movie, it was like a Saturday afternoon. I remember it was during Aries season because I have the chart of when this happened. It was a couple of years ago during Aries season. And I know I like have the birth chart of me watching this movie.
That's incredible.
So silly and funny. But I was sitting on the couch with my husband and we were just like flipping through channels, and we came across this movie and he was like, "Oh yeah, I watched this a long time ago when I was in high school and I really liked it." And I was like, "Let's watch it." And so we started watching it like halfway through. So it was like halfway through to the end. And I loved it so much, but I didn't see the beginning. And I was like, the ending was so cool. Everything was so cool. And so a couple weeks later, we watched it straight through. And then I just kept rewatching it and rewatching it. Like it became almost like my comfort movie where I'd like every couple of weeks I'd have to like throw it on and watch it. And that's how it started. And it's so interesting to me because the first time I watched it again, I only saw the ending of it. So I only saw like after Winslow had transformed into the Phantom rather than like I didn't watch the actual transformation occur. And so it really like shifted my view of his character when I saw it again from the beginning.
Wow, got the full Winslow experience from the beginning. And I just love that this is your comfort movie, something so creative and outside the box. And I mean, even looking around your space right now, I can see the colors of the movie clearly had such an influence on you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how bright and vibrant the movie is. And yeah, there's lots of like reds, and it's like, 1970s like glam rock, like musical movie, right? So there's just a lot of glamour, and that is obviously something I love as well. You
mentioned feeling a draw initially to horror because, again, from the jump, you're a Hades devotee, you're drawn to the underworld, and there's such a strong villain in this movie, in Swan. And I would love to hear your feelings about Swan and this sort of mega villain in this movie and whether or not you feel drawn to him.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I love this movie because I feel like everybody is kind of a villain, and I just love stories like that. I feel like those are my favorite stories where everybody kind of has some problematic thing that they're doing or something that they're doing that is antagonizing in some way. Because I just feel like it's really like real to like how humans are. Like they're, I don't know. It strikes me as very like authentic. So I love Swan. He's my favorite character. I just love everything about him. I love that I know he's supposed to be kind of like the demon, right? Like he's supposed to be like the Faustian like demon character, right? But I love that he's like physically very small. Like the actor is like physically very short and small and like almost like angelic looking. Like he's supposed to be the demon in a way, but he's very like looks like a cherub or something. And so I just loved that from the get-go because you almost like don't believe he's the villain. You're like this guy, like he's not very domineering in any way except for his actions. So that was something that immediately drew me to him. And I don't know what it is. I just feel like my whole life, the villains of every story, I'm just so drawn to. And I do think a lot of it has to do with, I don't know, like my interest in Hades. He's definitely an archetype that, gets kind of painted as the villain a lot of the times. And that's part of him. That's he, is the deity that helps you investigate the shadow. And I think he sort of needs to have that to his nature. Like that side of him is very, really important. So I've just always been somebody, whether it's like through my spirituality or through media or through my own writing, I just really like to explore the villain vibe, the villain archetype. So yeah, I also think that like I was kind of reflecting about this beforehand, and I do think that part of the villain thing for me is because I grew up in like a house where it was like me and my sibling, and one of us was always like the bad child, and one of us was always like the good child. There was sort of this like golden child like thing going on in our house. And so I was like usually like the golden child kind of person. And then my sister was like oh, don't be like her, or like don't make these mistakes like she was, or whatever. And so I think as I was growing up, I was really drawn to villains because they almost gave me like a way of being that was so unlike myself because I was trying to be so good and so like perfect and like not upset anybody. And so that's what Hades really was able to do for me, where he was like, hey, like, I'm going to teach you that boundaries are good. And like, it's not always a good thing to be perceived as like the person who never, does anything bad or wrong. And like, it can actually be helpful. And I think that maybe that is something that I carry into my interest in all villains in terms of when I come across them in media.
That totally reminds me of a quote from Carl Jung where he's like, we don't become enlightened by exploring figures of light. Like it's sort of in the darkness that we become enlightened. And I think feeling drawn to the villain, especially for you, where that was not a place where you were able to explore in your life. And as you say, like through connecting with Hades and exploring the villain and horror, it's exploring your own shadows. And also, like the good person, sometimes in movies, horror, or otherwise, like they don't have any fun. Like it's the villain who gets to have a good time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, they have all the fun, and it is really interesting. And Swan is just kind of iconic, even though he's terrible. But in a way, like I said, like so like everybody has something that they do in that movie, like Winslow and even Phoenix, that could be seen as like, oh, like that's not objectively a thing that people should do. That's not good, or that's like a villain thing or something like that.
I think that's such an empathetic understanding of the villain archetype or even the hero archetype, and how sometimes it's not black or white, one or the other, and these things can mix, and sometimes it's hard to tell who is who, because as we learn more about Swan's story in this movie and his sort of connection to that Dorian Gray thing, like he's really afraid about losing his power when he gets old, so he makes this deal with the devil. And it seems like every time someone in this movie wants to like kind of like cash in or make their own deal with the devil, they end up hurting somebody else in the process because it's coming from their own hurt place.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. And it is true. And it is interesting to see how it unfolds because it's like at first, and you don't really realize this until the end of the movie, but at first Swan is the one who makes the deal. And then he has Winslow do that, and then he has, Phoenix does that after that. And it is really like this almost talks about how like these acts are like passed down, right? Of like somebody is hurt, like trauma, like somebody is
Yeah.
hurt, and then they sort of have to pass that down to somebody else, or somebody, makes this choice, and then that choice ends up affecting somebody else, and they become like the enforcer of that in a way. So that was also really interesting to watch how it all happened. And I did feel, and I do feel kind of empathetic towards Swan for that choice in a way, because he obviously made the choice to, for him, it's like he wants to stay young, he wants to look young. So that was the deal that he makes, is to, always look young. And it's sort of a callback to Dorian Gray. But I can empathize with that in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it also feels like I also don't understand it either. Like it's like, wow, like it is interesting that somebody would go to such lengths for that. But it reminds me, that particular thing reminds me a lot of like Saturn energy, and like even now we're like in Saturn and Aries, and that whole idea of like somebody who is like trying not to age, or trying not to like lose their sense of power because of the idea of aging. It is so Saturn and Aries. It's so like I need to just hold on to what it is that I have, because I'm afraid of that. And I think with age also comes like the idea of wisdom. So in a way, I think Swan is almost signing over his ability to evolve. And that is also explored in the movie, where he's always trying to like change the type of music that he's producing. And so there's almost this weird thing where it's like he's always trying to find a new type of music and trying to go with the trends, but he himself almost has decided that he's going to always stay the same and be the same. And I think that's why he's sort of unable to do that successfully.
Absolutely. I think maybe something you could think about is making like an astrological companion for this movie, because I love you have a birth chart for the movie. You thought about Saturn and Aries as it relates to Swan, and he really seems to have this organizing principle too, that aging equals bad. I'll lose my power if I age, or if I'm not youthful and beautiful. Would have loved for him to go to therapy, because when we're not catching these patterns, like he's continuing the cycle of abuse, right? And all these other people sort of get caught up in it, and it doesn't end super great for them. Another big theme in this movie that I would love to hear your thoughts about, as an artist, as a witch, as a creative, is this
Mhm.
idea of having to sell your soul to the devil in order to have your art, your ideas out there. So, how would you sort of classify or quantify the state of being an artist, a creative, a professional witch in this year of our Lord slash Satan 2025?
Oh, yes, yes. It is so interesting. This is what I do for a living. Like, this is my job. And I am so grateful for my job that I get to talk about witchcraft on the internet for a living. But it also is so strange to like be doing sort of these things that I would say most of my clients, most of my students, most of my followers, their spiritual practices are very private, right? They're not something that a lot of them really talk about or discuss, except for like, in my spaces, or in my classes and that sort of thing. So it is really cool to provide this like spotlight in a way onto these things that are kind of happening like privately in people's lives. But it is also strange to talk about such like important things to me, like my spirituality and just the occult in general, which means like unseen and hidden, in such a public way. So that's sort of one of the things that I think sometimes feels difficult about being like an online witchcraft content creator. And it's I feel like it's similar with art, where it's like so much of art is happening behind the scenes, and it's hard to share it sometimes. And of course, like when we do, we can impact so many people. And I'm not somebody that like thinks that all of this stuff needs to be hidden. Like obviously I do show my altars, I show things that a lots of people would not want to show online. But so I do see the value in it, but it is difficult, and it does feel like, okay, I'm like putting myself out here in a very like public and energetic way. And it can be hard and draining. And it's just there's this dichotomy of like, this is something that is so, I don't know, like life-giving and private and restorative for so many people. But for me, it's my job. It's my 9 to 5. And the
Yeah.
lines get blurred there sometimes.
I wonder if that ever becomes difficult to create those boundaries for yourself or sort of to differentiate. Yeah, as you say, the occult and a lot of spiritual practices, they're private and that's why they're nourishing. So it's like, how do you decide what to keep for yourself and then what you want to put out there and share?
For me, I it's been a learning curve. It's hard. Sometimes I'm like, oh, do I really want to share this? Or sometimes I will like share something and then like a year later or 2 years later be like, oh, I probably wouldn't talk about that now, but like it's interesting that, I was talking about that then or something. So I do feel like it is a learning curve. I think for me, there are parts of my practice that kind of from the start, I'm like, okay, I don't want to talk about this like at all. Like, this is not something that I want to share. This is something that I want just for me. And then there's parts of my practice where they feel like they're kind of urging to be seen and to be shared. And those are the ones that I kind of lead with. And even when I started my social media in 2020, that's when I started this whole thing. Those things that I was leading with back then are still the same things. Like I remember my first post on Instagram way back when was like, I think it was like a picture of like Orpheus like leaving the underworld, and I was talking about the underworld. And so that was something that I led with, where I was like, this is so important and I want to talk about this. But there's so many things in my spiritual practice that I've just never ever talked about, and I probably won't. And because of that, it's almost like nobody knows that I'm even interested in those things, because it's just never come through and never come out. So those things I do cherish, and that's kind of how I like to break it up.
I feel like something happens to our artwork or yeah, these really vulnerable parts of ourselves that we're sharing when we do kind of let them free into the wild. We see that in Phantom of the Paradise. Winslow, he makes this really beautiful, sincere music during the first part of the movie that you initially didn't see. And once he kind of hands it over to the creative platform, you could say, which is Swan, it gets misappropriated and misconstrued. Swan wants to hire hot people to sing his music. It's very Milli Vanilli, and he wants to change it to try and be trendy or be a certain way. And I know that you work a lot with this idea of the persona in your work and having an online persona. And I'm
Mhm.
curious, we see in Phantom of the Paradise, once you put it out there, it kind of takes on a life of its own, and maybe that wasn't your initial intention. I'm wondering what you think about that.
I love this question. I love persona magic. I became interested in it because I'm on social media. Like I became interested in it because I found myself cultivating like an online personality and online persona. And then I was kind of like, ooh, what if we like made this a magical act? Or what if what if I was doing this in a really intentional way? And so I work with persona magic to cultivate and create, yeah, like basically my online self. I feel like for me, I love having a persona because I'm able to say like, okay, Angelica like Cresci, like that is my that is her name, right? That is my online persona. That's what everybody knows me as. Like she is this figure and this intelligence that I've created. And so I feel like I do have like a sense of control over her. So in a way, to answer your question, I do feel like I can work with her and she is like kind of my energy. And so we're almost like just two sides of the coin in a way. So I feel pretty in control of her in terms of like a force. But I can tap into her and say like, hey, what do you want to talk about? Because sometimes what like me, like just sort of myself, like what I want to talk about is not what she wants to talk about. And that has been so helpful actually for my content over the last couple of years because I'm like, oh, like I just need to, I've created this persona, and now I just need to like follow her lead in a way. And so it does feel very integrated. It never really feels like she's like running away with something too much. It's almost just like I get to have this like business partner in what I'm doing. I think sometimes the hard thing is the days where I don't want to show up as her. Like sometimes I'm just like I just want to be, I don't know, like I just want to be like my mundane kind of daily self that like my husband sees or you know some of my family members see. And it's not, I shouldn't say like it's not like that different. Like it's not like, oh my gosh, like I'm a totally different person and I am terrible in real life or anything. It's none of that. But you know, she has like a color scheme and like a way of presenting herself. And she does have like a very distinct sort of motive and what she's trying to do and what she's trying to say. And some days it's just really hard for me to slip into that. Sometimes I'll make a piece of content and I'm like, this is not Angelica Cresci enough. Like this is not her. And I need to just like let her be her.
Do you ever just want to like wear gray sweatpants and Crocs?
My version of that is like really baggy jeans and like a Patagonia like top and like I drive a Subaru. Like I'm a little I'm like I drove cross country like in my Subaru. Like I'm a Sag moon. That is like sort of my more mundane personality. Like I'm like, let's go on a hike, let's go drive around in my Subaru with my Patagonia. And then Angelica Cresci is like, we're putting on the gold and the red lipstick, and that's like my Capricorn side.
Bless the Subaru Patagonia. And I almost, as you were telling me about it, I was almost like, don't share any more with us. It feels so special to keep that for yourself and just live your, you know, little nature girl life. That feels really special. And I think it's interesting to explore this idea of how that persona is explored in this movie. I was even thinking with the naming of the character, Winslow Leach, it made me think about Cary Grant. So his real name is Archibald Leach. He wasn't going to become a famous, you know, Hitchcock star with that name. So they changed it to Cary Grant. And I have my little quote here for him. He said, everybody wants to be Cary Grant. Even I want to be Cary Grant because, you know, he was, you know, a human. He was very insecure. He was unsure of himself. He was not this debonair, perfect guy. And that really came up for me in the movie, thinking about, yeah, these personas that we give ourselves in order to be more public facing, and how at times that can be really empowering, and how at times it can feel like a really heavy weight. And then, you know, maybe we turn into a phantom and start haunting a theater.
Yes, I love it. I just think it's so interesting. I haven't heard that about Cary Grant before. But I think it's so true. And I often think about, I mean, I'm just like a content creator. Like I'm not like a celebrity, like you know what I mean? But it's like I can't even imagine what people with like even larger platforms kind of have to experience, and it does feel like a compartmentalization in a way, which is sometimes good because sometimes you want to it's helpful to compartmentalize areas of your life, especially since my job is talking about my spiritual path. So it is sort of helpful to have a part of me doing that, you know, it's still me. Like she's still me, but it's just like a very specific part of me that talks about that. So I do find it helpful as well.
One thing I really notice in this movie is the presence of hell. It's kind of everywhere. It's in the color schemes, particularly in different corridors in the paradise, and it's just in the air where Winslow, he's kind of living in hell, you know. He gets framed, he gets sent to prison, he becomes a phantom. Hell just feels like it's everywhere for him, and at a certain point, maybe it's becoming like so ubiquitous that it's hard to tell, like, oh, I am actually living in hell. I have given away too much. I have sold my soul to the devil. For you as a creative, when are you in hell? Or can you tell when you've crossed that threshold and it's like, now we're in hell?
Yeah. I'm in hell when I'm comparing myself to other people or other creators. Like I'm in hell when I'm like, damn, like I really gotta post today, even though I wasn't planning on it because somebody else posted and I should be doing that. Or yeah, just comparison in general. I feel like that's really not helpful for anybody. A couple of years ago, I was even like, I can't see other types of witchcraft content. Like I follow a lot of people just because like we're mutuals or whatnot, but I mute like most people in my niche because I just don't even want to see it because I don't want it to accidentally, subconsciously like show up in any of my work. Or even just sometimes seeing it, I'm like, again, I'm not thinking about it from the lens of like, oh, like this is so cool, good for them, love it, or like, wow, what a great witchcraft tip. Like sometimes, because when I'm on social media, I'm like there for work, right? So I'm thinking like, oh, like, wow, that was such a great delivery. I need to be more like that, you know? And it's very self-critical. So I really try not to. I really try to stay away from all of that and just from comparison in general. And I'm a Capricorn, like I am my own worst enemy. I'm very, very self-critical. So like the last thing I need is more of that going on in my head. And I think another time when I'm in hell is when I feel like I'm so busy that I can't actually sit down and create or figure out what it is that I'm trying to say. And this is a social media problem, but I think this is just like a sometimes a burnout problem too, where social media moves so quickly and I feel like I constantly have to be producing and making content. And there's just sometimes in my work schedule where like I'm just so busy. I'm like teaching 3 classes, I'm doing a bunch of readings, like there's so much going on, like IRL with amazing students and clients that I'm like actually interacting with. And then I'm like, oh shit, like I have to tap in over here and like broadcast. And I love being creative and I love making content, but when I don't have like the time to make it fun or to like really engage with it in a creative way, I hate it. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, like I like the creative act of it. And so when the creative act isn't there, it feels rushed or it feels like I have to do this because I have to get something out. That's when I feel like I'm in hell.
That makes me think about what we were talking about in terms of these cycles of harm, right? Like Swan was hurting, so he hurt other people. And it's like both Winslow and Phoenix were harmed directly by Swan, right? There was the whole, murder thing, the framing, and then Phoenix experienced a, potential assault, and they know that Swan is this bad guy, and yet they go back to work with him because it's almost like they don't know another way, like similar to a cycle of abuse or an abusive relationship. And it sounds like you can really notice there are times when working on social media or these platforms, yeah, of course, it has, lots of benefits, but then there are these times where it veers into being harmful. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you sort of balance the benefits versus the harms.
Such a great question. I am somebody who I really do see so much value in social media, even just in my life. Like I have been so transformed by the potential to, connect with people in a really wide way. And so I am so grateful for it. And I don't know. Even with my glamour magic, I'm always like, I don't know, like, yeah, the algorithm is maybe being mean right now, but like I can fix that with glamour. So I even feel like I have a pretty positive view a lot of the time of social media and sort of my ability to like go on there and interact. But I definitely feel like in one area in my life where there's this real like dichotomy of the pros and the cons is it's so pervasive in my life now where it's like every time I'm anywhere, I'm like, I have to film this, or I'm like out with, my family or my husband or something, and I'm like, okay, we need to pause for 15 minutes. I need to get a shot. I need to pull up this audio. I need to like do, I need to look at my notes. I tend to struggle with like the boundaries of that. And yeah, it's been something that I don't know, like I didn't think this was going to happen. Like I'm genuinely shocked at how pervasive it is in terms of like it really does feel like I'm connected to this thing, and like you said, like I keep going back, I keep having to go back, I keep opening up the app and being like, all right, let's do it. I guess. And nowadays, even too, like there's like I used to just really be on Instagram, and that was like my primary platform for a long time, and that was on purpose because I only wanted to open up like one app, and I was like, I guess it'll be Instagram. And I wasn't really on TikTok, and I wasn't really doing anything. But now I'm like, doing a lot more like cross posting and like posting on YouTube, and really there's like expansion going on in that in terms of like my presence right now. And that has also been really like a learning curve for me because now it's not just like, okay, I'm tapping into Instagram. It's like TikTok, YouTube, like all these places, threads. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm in a lot of places energetically. And so it is overwhelming sometimes. And but yet it's overwhelming, but yet you feel like you can't stop because things will just go on without you if you do.
I think so many people can relate to that feeling. It makes me think of that scene in this movie where Winslow is trying to make his art after he's turned into this spooky phantom figure, and he's literally connected to a bunch of machines in order to be able to function and share his art. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I think maybe that's also why we're seeing the rise of certain platforms that are taking people out of the noise to connect with art in a more direct way. Like, this is why I so appreciate things like your Patreon, or people have newsletters where you can find an artist or an educator that you really love who's sharing stuff that you really connect with. And you don't have to listen to all the noise, and you can just kind of be over here in this place and connect with them directly. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on some of these emerging places that seem a bit more, I don't know, I almost want to call them pure. I hope they don't get ruined like everything
Mhm.
else has.
Yeah. I agree. I love Patreon and all of the different types of like content creator monetization stuff, whether it be like Substack or newsletters in general. I think it's so helpful. And I also just love being a part of those communities as well because I even like, one of my favorite astrologers, I'm like on their Patreon, and I just love like opening up the Patreon website and just scrolling through that almost as like, okay, this is like my feed of like actual good content. There's no brain rot. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like learning materials and blog posts. And I'm like, wow, like this is just so nourishing. So it's funny, like that is what I watch. Like that is what I watch and listen to is like lectures, Patreon stuff. Sometimes if I watch like content for too long, I'm like, no, like I need to go into something a little bit more where I feel like I'm learning. I just really like that. I was also going to say that I do think that there's kind of a discourse around like people not loving the subscription model, or like the like, oh well, I don't, like, why does everybody have to have a Patreon or a Substack or something? And I think that there's sometimes this like negative connotation to it of like, oh, they're just trying to make money, or like they're not actually saying anything and they're just trying to get like monthly revenue and that sort of thing. And I've seen a lot of really intelligent people that I respect criticizing it, which I totally understand. But I think from somebody who is a creator and who does, use and make, my monthly like revenue and like rent, from things like Patreon. For me, it's like an ability, or it's a place where I can connect with people who actually do want to go deeper with me. And I feel really like comfortable there because it's not the wider internet, and we can have deeper conversations. And I even was talking a little bit earlier about like things that I do not want to share about my magical practice. I still like, I'll still have boundaries around that, but like I'm much more likely to share stuff and talk about deeper things in my practice there because I just feel more comfortable there. And you're like kind of almost like committing to wanting to learn from me over there. So it's a place for me to like let the like I'm feeling like this like tension in a way of like, sometimes being online, like there's this like tension there, and Patreon is like this place where I can just like let that go. And there's not this like tension of, oh, what should I share? What should I talk about? It's just like, I'll just talk about, what my patrons want me to talk about, or what I feel really called to talk about that week, but it just would not perform well on social media. So yeah, I really love those platforms too.
I think what you said is also really highlighting how a lot of these platforms and ways that artists share their work, I mean, they're changing our values, right? Like you talk about brain rot. Like, are we just really out here okay with our brains rotting? Like, I'm not okay with that. I paid a lot for my brain. I don't want it to rot. And I don't think I had necessarily heard that criticism you were sharing, that some people feel everyone having a Patreon or a subscription is, I don't know, like not cool or on the up and up in some kind of way. And I think for me, maybe that also speaks to how we've really devalued art and creativity with this expectation that it should just be for free. And amazingly creative and inspirational people like you should just be giving that to us 100% for free. I think that's I don't know, maybe like that's kind of my idea of hell.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's hard for people to understand that, like, there have always been professional artists who have made art or been writers or whatever they do, right? Teachers, educators who have sort of like they've always existed and they've always had to have been paid by somebody, right? And I think that that is something that we're a little disconnected from in the modern world. It's funny because we're almost so increasingly like productivity and money focused, but at the same time, I feel like there is this gap. And maybe part of it is like art is becoming this thing that so many people view as like it's content now. It's not like art, it's content. And what does even that mean? Like content, like it contains something, like what does it contain? And so this is what I think about when I'm going to bed at night. I'm like, what is happening with content? But I think that just the art is just shifting, and I think it's sometimes hard for people to remember that this is always something that we've paid people for, and that there is that value to it.
So we talked about being in hell, but how do you go about not losing your soul, right? Like, I think so much about being a creative and a witch is about listening, taking the time to listen and take in the world around you, to connect with your deities, like spend that time at your altar thinking deeply and, connecting to the underworld and not these digital hellscapes. How do you navigate those types of boundaries to give yourself the time to listen?
So this has been such a learning curve for me as well. Like, it is hard to have those boundaries be in place, especially when I'm like, oh, I'm meditating right now. Let me pull out my phone because the people online are gonna want to see this. Like, it's so it's so hard as a witchcraft or like a spiritual content creator. So what I do mostly now is I really like to like usually on the weekends I'll like prioritize my magic, my rituals. I also really like to plan things in advance and like put them on my calendar of like, okay, I have this astrological election, I have this time, I have spent some, time planning this ritual and what it is that I'm going to do so that partially when I get there, it's like I've already kind of figured out what I'm going to do. So I feel really comfortable just kind of like flowing into the ritual space. But also so I can like literally block off that time and be like, okay, I need to, kind of take a chill that day, or like after 7, I'm in meditation or ritual, and like it's weird to have to put it on your calendar, but it is helpful. So I do that a lot now, and I try not to like go on social media a ton on the weekends. I still do, but I'm not really as active on the weekends. And I try to keep that like for family and for projects that are not social media based that I'm working on and for ritual and magic. So during the week, it really looks like me doing my work day. And sometimes I'll work pretty long hours. And then usually like morning and night, both times, I do some type of like embodiment practice. So sometimes it is like at night, it's like coming down from the intensity of the day of filming or whatever. And I'll set up my altar and I'll say some prayers and I'll connect with Hades. Not like super intensely, but just sort of briefly to ground myself. And then on the weekends, I'll do like a more kind of detailed ritual with him or something. I also love dancing. Like dancing is if I don't dance in a day, like I will lose it. Like I need to like move like every morning, every night, every morning when I wake up. That's the first thing I do is I put my headphones on and I twirl around. I call it like my twirling time. And everyone in my house is just like, oh, Angelica's just twirling around. And that helps center me. That's where I get all my ideas. Like I'll get content ideas, I'll get ideas for my writing projects. That is like my Gnostic state. And I feel like I can't like function without it. So in a way, I feel like I don't even think I would be able to be a creative or be a content creator or anything if I didn't give myself time to just be embodied or just to meditate or whatever that looks like. I just don't even think I could like function as a creative person without those things present.
You gotta have your twirling time. And weekends are for jeans, Patagonia pullovers, and Subarus. That's just for
Exactly.
you.
Hmm.
Angelica, I have loved talking to you more about your creative process. And again, thank you so much for sharing this movie with me. It's now for sure one of my faves. Is there anything else you want to share about what this movie means to you? A message that people need to know about this movie?
Well, it's just such a funny movie. I mean, it's like, there's like a little bit of gore and there's like a little bit of obviously darker themes, but it's a musical. There's songs, there's singing, there's dancing. It's just so fun and I'm obsessed with it. I think I think one last thing I'll say about the movie is something that it helped me process as well was like I really, really resonated with Phoenix because who's like the female kind of main character, and she is trying to get her work out there, and she's trying to become a singer and a performer. And I resonate with her for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons was like her willingness to like literally her willingness to just put herself out there and do whatever it takes to be in a position where she can perform. It reminds me of my nature, but also it's almost like a warning to me or a reminder to not be too available or not be too willing or to use discernment. So that is definitely a message that I want people to take from the movie, but just like generally, like I always say, like fate favors the bold. Like you have to put yourself out there. You have to do things that are out of your comfort zone, but you can't say yes to everything. And you also have to have discernment. And those things are sometimes I'm like, fate favors the bold. I have to just say yes to everything and do everything. And it's like, no, because that can get you into places like Phoenix in the movie where you're selling your soul to the devil and you're like, oh shit, I don't want to do this anymore. So yeah, use discernment and you can be successful and also be ethical and also be authentic to who you are and authentic to what it is that you want to create. You know, I like creating with Angelica Cresci. That is authentic to me. I love the work that I'm doing, which, you know, it is very specific, it is very niche. And I have, you know, been successful. And so you don't need to sound like everyone else. You don't need to be like everyone else. You can be unique and have your own unique way of doing it and still find success.
Fate favors the bold, but don't overdo it because you'll end up in hell.
Yeah. That's Saturn and Aries in a nutshell.
That really is Saturn and Aries. It's very that. Thank you so much for being here today, Angelica, and please let everybody know where they can, or maybe you don't want them to find you, but if you do want people to find you and connect with your amazing work that is so inspirational, so nourishing, so healing, I love it. I couldn't live without your Patreon. Please let the people know where to find you.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Angelica S. Cresci. My website is angelicacresci.com. My Patreon is just like patreon.com/Angelica Cresci. And yeah, I'm in all the places. I also have a podcast called Diaries of a Witch podcast. It's a weekly show, new episodes every Wednesday. And we talk about everything from astrology to magic and witchcraft and deity work. I also do some interviews over there as well with different types of practitioners.
And that, my ghouls, is the story of Phantom of the Paradise. Seriously, you gotta watch this movie. It's giving Rocky Horror Picture Show vibes, but with more depictions of hell. How can you say no to that? Mental Health is Horrifying is entirely researched, written, edited, and produced by me, Candace Green, registered and spooky psychotherapist. If you like this podcast, please consider rating and reviewing on your preferred listening platform. It really helps the show to reach all the other spooky ghouls out there, and I will be eternally grateful. And an eternity is a very long time for a vampire, okay? If you live in Ontario and or Toronto and are interested in psychotherapy with me, I offer both virtual and in-person therapy for final girls in haunted houses who want to make sense out of the guts of their lives. I specialize in grief and trauma and incorporate both tarot and dream work into my practice as tools to delve deeper into fields of psychic terrain. You can follow me on Instagram at Mental Health is Horrifying, and you can also learn more about me and my services through my website, manymoonstherapy.com. Or you can also howl at the moon and I will hear your call. Bright blessings.